A warning tonight about Seattle's financial future. The city's budget shortfall is larger than originally projected, with the latest deficit coming to nearly $500 million over the next several years.
Colleagues, this amendment would reallocate $300,000 in one-time funding to the Human Services Department to grant funding to community-based organizations supporting LGBTQIA individuals with essential needs, including, most namely, support with emergency shelter, housing, food access, employment support, and more.
That we've been hearing and seeing of thousands of people coming to Washington State, probably to Seattle, Washington, for those kinds of resources.
Advocates say more trans people and families are moving to Seattle seeking safety and support. They say many are leaving states with anti-LGBTQ laws or hostile political climates. And while there's no exact local data, a study from the Movement Advancement Project and the University of Chicago found that since November of 2024, at least 400,000 transgender and gender nonconforming people have moved states.
Brandon, this comes as Mayor Katie Wilson says the city council is making the deficit worse.
He said Seattle's projected budget deficit has ballooned to $175 million for next year, even though general fund revenue, primarily property sales, utility, business, payroll, taxes, have grown dramatically to over $2 billion. He points out that's up 17% from $1.72 billion in 2024 and up 40% from $1.44 billion in 2019.
The report states, since the Jumpstart payroll tax was implemented, downtown Seattle has lost around 30,000 jobs.
The commission is now urging Mayor Katie Wilson to declare a civil emergency.
We're seeing it coming in troops. Trans people coming from especially red states to Seattle to not just for gender affirming care, for safety.
We oppose the use of taxpayer money for these purposes. It's clear that the appeal made to the mayor to declare an emergency of trans refugees was based on highly inflated numbers and that no such emergency exists. I am calling on the council to take action to disband the IDT, and I will bring more public attention to this issue to help facilitate this.
$300,000 from the Jumpstart payroll tax has been allocated for the LGBTQIA plus organizations. It's been approved in committee. Now Seattle City Council must vote on it. There was a deal not long ago, and a lot of us were talking about it, and I asked around. It was the concept that there are trans refugees coming to Seattle from all over the country. No, I don't doubt that some are coming. But is it enough where the city of Seattle, they wanted the mayor to proclaim it an emergency situation so they get funding? It feels like a money grab, because I'm not seeing trans individuals, panhandling on the sidewalk. Hey, I came here because I'm being persecuted and now I need some money. I'm not really seeing that. Now, the organizations that support the LGBTQIA+, they are saying they're rapidly running out of funding. But when you look at the kinds of things that it's funding, you're like, isn't that provided regardless of your sexual orientation? Or, if you're a man and you're trying to pretend that you're a woman, you know what I mean? Aren't you going to get funding no matter what? You don't need specific funding for that. And I haven't seen anything indicating thousands have moved here to the point where the existing structure is not able to handle it. I haven't seen it. So to me, it feels a little bit like a money grab, because who in Seattle was going to question that? If this were happening in Portland, would we question it in Portland? No. It would just happen. Be like, oh yeah, funding for that, you betcha. And the reason I'm doing this podcast is because when we talk about all of the taxes and what they go towards, you got $300K here. I know it's not a lot of money relative to the overall size of what's going on in Seattle, but it all adds up, right? It all adds up. And so when you're funding things, and when I say harebrained things that shouldn't necessarily be funded, this is some of that where you're left with, is this really necessary? Do we need this? And I'm kind of like, I don't think so. But let's get into it. Seattle City's Council Finance, Native Communities and Tribal Governments Committee, whose members are Dan Strauss, Maritza Rivera, Joy Hollingsworth, Robert Kettle, and Rob Saka, voted on August 4th to approve a proposed budget amendment that would set aside $300,000 for local LGBTQIA plus organizations. How many letters they got in there now? 6, 7, 8? So 8 out of, yeah, you basically got more than a quarter of the alphabet, right? Is it about a third of the alphabet? Somewhere in there. How many more can we take there? Next week, the city council will decide on whether it should be enacted. Now, this to me, Seattle always has a budget deficit, right? County has a budget deficit. The state has a massive budget deficit because we're spending money from taxes from businesses on stuff like this that arguably there is nothing supporting the fact that they truly need it. Show me some facts. Show me some trans refugees here that have been impacted to the point where they can't get funding, they can't get help, financial help from the existing organizations that are already out there. That's where I'm like, what are we doing here? Introduced by Council Member Alexis Mercedes Rink, the amendment would allocate money from the Jumpstart Fund to Seattle's Human Services Department to support a funding process for LGBTQ community organizations. Since when do we have funding for sexual orientation? You know what I mean? Where's the hetero funding? Where's the hetero? Where's the furry funding? I'm just going down this road. I have been following the WNBA. I'm a huge Sophie Cunningham fan. I just think she's great. And she just kind of says it the way she says it. And she gives as good as she gets. Got clothesline, just taken down. She got up, bleeding. She's fine. She's fine. But she's basically said, hey, we need to support girls in girls' sports and not have boys playing in girls' sports. The whole world just blew up. And then now we've got 2 recently retired NBA players. One of them is 6'10", 250 pounds. He has made himself eligible for the 2027 WNBA draft. If you haven't been following that story, it is hilarious. Because these guys are coming right out and saying, well, for the purposes of playing WNBA basketball and furthering my career, I identify as a woman. I'm feeling pretty feminine. Might be a woman for purposes of this. And the WNBA, in their charter, they don't have enough to say, oh, you guys can't come. You're men. 6'10", 250 pounds. That would be a dunk every single time up and down the court. The other team, is barely going to be able to score. Even with just one dude. One big dude that can cover, 3 or 4 players at once. Just massive. They're 2 black dudes. It's the craziest thing because you've got a situation where now the rubber hits the road. All right, you got men pretending to be women, and yet that's all that, basically the trans community does, right? You've got men that claim they're women. Well, they're not. They're still men. And now you've got dudes doing it for the purposes of playing pro ball in the women's league. And so the WNBA is right now, they're having meetings to determine what a woman is. And you're like, what? And some of these players in the WNBA say, oh, we'll support a trans player. Yeah, until you get absolutely dunked on. You know what I mean? Just somebody gets hurt. You got a guy that's 6'10", 250 against women, even against a Brittany Griner, right? 6'9", what is she, 215? Is she 200? She's thin. That guy is just going to absolutely smush her. Just dominate her. But, that's the whole thing of inclusivity. Hey, we need to be inclusive. Yeah, that guy who's pretending with a wig that's 6'10". So I am dying to see if those guys make it into the draft. I mean, it would be hilarious because it's so upside down. So does Seattle have enough of an influx of trans individuals where it requires extra funding for this stuff? Who knows, right? If approved, the funds would be given to local LGBTQIA plus organizations providing essential services to vulnerable populations. Are they vulnerable? The federal government is just saying, nope, we're not funding that. Nope, nope, nope. And they're saying that states like Texas are hostile. States like Texas are hostile towards a lot of things, including stupid thinking. So, unless you're in Austin, anything goes, right? So, vulnerable populations. Are you really that vulnerable? I mean, honestly, you know what I mean? Just like, you act like you're protected flowers or something. Are people beating you up on the daily? You know what I mean? People might call you names. Well, you're pretending to be a woman. You're pretending. So, such as emergency shelter and housing, okay, can't you get that anyway? Just, I mean, isn't that available to everybody here? Employment services, that's available to everybody. So why, based on your sexual orientation, do you need additional funding? Food insecurity services, I mean, I'm trans, I'm not getting the food I need. No. Everybody, they don't ask you, oh, let's say you're not hetero, you're trans, therefore we're not going to give you a SNAP benefits card. No. So, you know what I mean? There's a couple of different moving parts to this story that to me don't add up. But at the city council meeting later in the day, several LGBTQIA plus community members, including some from the mutual aid network for trans and intersex people in Seattle, the Mantis and Traction Executive Director Michael Woodward gave public comments urging the council to approve the measure, with some also demanding it still declare a state of emergency for queer and trans refugees without any evidence that there is an emergency. What's the emergency? What's the emergency? You don't have enough funding? People aren't able to get the surgeries they want? Well, you know, maybe that's not such a terrible idea. Since May, Seattle's LGBTQIA plus organizations and their leaders have been sounding the alarm regarding the influx of queer and trans refugees. I'd like to see some numbers on that. How many people are you talking about? Because I'm hearing tens of thousands. So they're saying that the refugees have fled hostility in other parts of the country. All right, okay, but what about that? So they come here, and then what do you need that isn't covered, you know, in daily normal life for anybody, whether you're a man, woman, you're pretending to be a woman, you're pretending to be a man, whatever it is, you're intersex, you're non-binary, what is it? To me, it honestly just feels like a money grab. And it's based on this ideology of, well, you can be whatever you want to be. All right, well, WNBA is going to give that a roll, and we'll see how that works out, right? Given these groups' lack of capacity to handle the increase of what? The number of bodies, okay. Is there an actual, taxation on their services? Seattle LGBTQ Commission wrote in a letter addressed to City Council and Mayor Katie Wilson. Well, they know they're far left. They're progressive, right? LGBTQ. They know that Mayor Katie Wilson's going to do something, so they're gonna request some kind of funding. Katie Wilson, without any real evidence, can't just declare a state of emergency. If you got a whole city that's been flooded, you got a whole county that's been flooded with actual water that you can see, then you declare a state of emergency. But just this whole notion of, well, we're going to declare a state of emergency just because, you can't really do that. And even the city council and, Comrade Wilson, our mayor, understand that. Okay, guys, we can't do that. But here's what we can do. We'll try and get you just a scooch of money. And I think that's what that is. This is appeasing the far left. and just basically, quiet down, boys. This is what we're doing. We're going to get you a little bit of money, going to shuffle it into these NGOs. Who knows where it actually goes, right? But it's expenditure after expenditure after expenditure like this, where you end up having all of these programs that you're funding, and if you don't have the revenue to cover it, you end up like Washington State. There's billions and billions and billions of dollars being spent that we didn't used to spend it on all these very generous social welfare programs. Although city officials have rejected the emergency declaration, good, because it's not warranted. So why is any of this funding warranted? I haven't seen any answers for that. Both the city council and the mayor's office have been working with the commission to come up with alternative ways to address the crisis. Is it a crisis? I have reached out to people that I know in the LGBTQIA community, and I've said, hey, is this a money grab? And they've said, absolutely. And I was like, oh, okay. Do you want to think about it for a second? No, not really. All right. Okay. All right. I mean, I am not, going after those types of resources. I am not doing that.
Other states. The Seattle LGBTQ Commission has sent a letter to Mayor Katie Wilson asking her to declare a civil state of emergency. Fox 13's 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗛 spoke with a trans woman who left Texas and asked her why she believes these resources are so important.
Seattle's LGBTQ community is growing by the thousands as trans and gender nonconforming people are seeking refuge in the city of Seattle. But advocates...
Can we somehow measure that? I mean... Can you show me the numbers on that? Because otherwise I'm just led to believe, oh, it's the thousands. I'm like, okay, prove it. Where's the hard numbers on this? Who's keeping track? Who's keeping track of trans moving from Texas to Seattle? Where's the database indicating this? Because funding for everything else is based on hard fact. And I am unable to prove these facts at the moment.
It's warned that the organizations helping them find their footing here could run out of resources by the summer. For decades, Capitol Hill has been a cultural and historic hub for Seattle's LGBTQ community. Advocates say they're seeing an increase of people coming here from more conservative states, hoping for a chance to live more openly and freely. For Jessa Davis.
Is it safe to say that you sought refuge here in Seattle?
Absolutely. That was the absolute intent.
Jessa moved to Seattle 3 years ago from Odessa, Texas, the place where she transitioned. But it was also the place where she says she no longer felt safe living. Jessa says she stayed in the closet for years, but the emotional toll became too heavy.
I was just like, I don't care, about anything more than trying to alleviate this just sense of dread.
But she says coming out to herself and others came at a cost.
It was scary. I lost friends, I lost colleagues, and I lived with a daily threat of violence.
Seattle LGBTQ Commission Chair Chris Curia says organizations helping trans and queer people relocate are struggling to keep up with the demand for basic things like housing, food assistance, and mental health support.
It's people coming to our region by the thousands.
I couldn't live my life.
So we keep hearing this, and yet I'm not seeing that. As far as, all right, where's the proof? Where's the proof? Proof is in the pudding. Ain't seeing no pudding. You know what I'm saying? I would love to know the numbers. All right, we've left these states and they've come here, but there's no database for that, is there? So that's where I'm kind of like, all right, if you're going to spend money from an Amazon payroll jumpstart tax, you're going to take money from businesses that is required. I mean, you're basically funding the budget right now with the jumpstart tax, right? And now you're funding this kind of stuff, which arguably we don't know if it's valid. We don't know if it's actually needed. But hey, let's go ahead and give them $300K anyway.
being afraid of my state government in Texas.
Because of stories like Jessa's, the Seattle LGBTQ Commission has asked Mayor Katie Wilson to declare a civil state of emergency.
There are some community organizations rapidly losing resources that could run out by the end of the summer.
Mayor Wilson says she's launching an
So arguably what you could say is that was funding given to groups based on their sexual orientation during the Biden era, which is now being cut back because it's not really necessary. So you're losing funding, but it's funding you probably shouldn't have had. And moving forward, you're not going to have. Yeah, just more freebies. You're looking for more freebies. All right. Okay. That's not an emergency. That's an adapt.
Departmental team to fast track what the needs are by August.
I am happy with the mayor's response as a starting point.
A rally in support of the transgender community is planned for Saturday at Cal Anderson. The commission hopes it sparks urgency so that funding and resources become available to help people like Jessa, who found safety in Seattle. From Capitol Hill, I'm Alejandra Guzman.
Seattle leaders say they're facing growing costs.
So Seattle just becoming the focal point for trans throughout the country. It's because we're so progressive. But at some point in time, without having a balanced budget, you can only overspend by so much. And if you are literally taxing these businesses like you are, like we've talked about, to the point where Starbucks is leaving. And, Starbucks used to be as woke as anybody. But then they started reeling it back in. All right, yeah, we're no longer letting everybody in our stores to use the restroom because they're doing some crazy stuff in those restrooms. And, by the way, people do have to order something. You can't just come in here and take one of our tables and just dominate it and not buy a... they used to be super woke. And... there's a finite limit to which that flies, and I think we're kind of seeing it. So will we see this thing get funded? Absolutely. It's Seattle. It's $300K. It's a drop in the bucket, but it's that whole notion of all the drops add up, right? All the drops add up, and so much of our taxpayers' money is going to stuff that you're like, who's overseeing the spending here? Who's overseeing the NGOs that this money is going to? And we're already spending hundreds of millions of dollars on the homeless thing, and it's just gotten worse. So spend a bunch of money on LGBTQ refugees because they say that they're being persecuted in Texas? All right, okay. I guess this is what we're doing. It's what we're doing. It's Seattle. So there's that, right? There's that. I'll let you know how this one goes. This is an interesting one. But the state of emergency, it's kind of like, what emergency? Where's the emergency, folks? You got a bunch of people moving here. What's the... If they can't handle being here and they can't work out how to get here, they don't have the funds to be here, maybe they need to, work their job in whatever state they're in for a while, save up some money, and then come here. We're in threat of physical violence. Are you really? Are you really, honestly? I mean, okay. All right. You know what I mean? Just, all right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. Love to have you subscribe. Hit that notification bell. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.